3, 2, 1.
We'd like to welcome you to another edition of Grok Talk, brought to you by New Hampshire's leading conservative blog site, GraniteGrok.com. We are your feared extremist, right-wing, hard-charging, gun-toting, opinionated, outspoken, rabble-rousing, letter-writing, radio microphone stomping conservatives and rational libertarians. So get ready for more news and opinion you could only get from GraniteGrok.com.
Grok Talk.
Okay, we are back. We're sorry we had to cut off the end of that last segment. We probably could have talked about the Baltimore riots for another half hour. No problem. But we got to move on because there's things to talk about. We have our next guest, Ron Moore, our storm chaser, is on the line. And Skip has a really, really important question for you, Ron.
Sure.
He wants to know, he's got to buy wood for next winter.
Yeah.
So he'd like to know what he should do.
Buy a bunch of it. Yeah, it does look like the third winter in a row coming up. It's going to be snowy and cold.
Yeah.
That's all I needed to hear.
I know. It makes, I went out the other day and I actually took a picture of the last couple of snow piles in our neighborhood in the woods, kind of, the shaded area where they got piled up, and I posted them. I had friends from Florida chiming in how much they hated it and everything, and I said, no, man, that's part of the pleasure of living in New England. You get to stretch it out over a 5-month period,
Well, they're still skiing. This is the last weekend of skiing, but here we are, beginning of May, and there are, I forget who it was that's running it, but they showed people still skiing there, and they're going to ski the entire weekend, even though we're going to be in the 70s.
Isn't that amazing? And what's more amazing is it was just, I think, 8 years ago. I've still got some of the clippings that the legislator in the state of New Hampshire and overall New England was dealing with this whole thing about the shortage of snow, how there wouldn't be anymore, and that's what they really were prepping for, was the ski resorts shutting down, snow removal not needed. And it's kind of funny how that all reversed, huh?
Yeah, that was Jean Shaheen, the U.S. ambassador from the federal government to New Hampshire.
Isn't that beautiful?
Yeah. Now, and of course, what she was saying that people weren't going to have jobs in the ski industry anymore, and well, the thing that she helped to pass that's bringing that about is Obamacare, because they can't get the seasonal help because the season's just long enough where these resorts have to pay for Obamacare for their workers, and they're saying we have to let them go because we can't afford it. So instead of a nature-caused problem, we have a man-made caused problem, a government-made caused problem.
It's always the problem, man. I tell you, I've studied weather, and I love weather history. I study all the big. It's always been that way. Man gets in the way; he creates the biggest issues. If you just unleash the free market in every instance, even when you have a big disaster, if you let the free market roll. It'll. I said this for Oklahoma when they have a tornado. It's a very small area to hit, and they know how to target it like an army. And they can really do it effectively. Here on the East Coast, we have hurricanes and big storms, and it's a totally different animal, but it's still down to the local community level. And when you get the feds involved, like you said, Jean Shaheen and everything else they want to do with all that, it all ties together, and everything they're passing now, Obamacare included, it has a bad result to the whole thing.
But the complaint is always, but we don't know what will happen. People will get hurt. These people will run wild. It's like, how's that working out for us right now with those in government and those in politics making all the decisions and using other people's money? Yeah, no,
I agree with you completely. The weekend, watch what's happening in Baltimore. You see it on display, and it's really sad. It really is.
Yeah. So let's go back to the season. Obviously, here in New Hampshire, we have seen a very cold March. Temperatures running between, in April, running 10 to 15 degrees below normal because of the jet stream. Mm-hmm. What's in store for us coming up?
I think I agree with some of the other guys out there, some of the long rangers and good forecasters that the early part of the summer we're probably going to spring into it. I've been telling people for a week or two. I don't know if I put it on Facebook, but I was telling folks at church and everything. I said, come Monday of next week, I said we're probably going to crack 80. We're seeing 75, but the heat coming up is just. We have some tropical development going on. We'll probably have. I know you guys have already seen it. There's a good chance of something tropical being off the southeast coast by say next Thursday. And all that does is pump the ridge, which pumps the heat, which pumps the moisture, too. So it's not just going to be, warm up here next week in the 70s, maybe cracking 80 in South New England, but it's also going to be kind of warm and humid with that. It's going to go, no spring. I ran the heater this morning down to 35 here at my house, and Monday afternoon probably be 80,
Great. This is like the fourth year in a row we've gone from the 40s to the 70s in a heartbeat.
Yep. And it's not uncommon in the plains. I used to live out there, and I said you could easily see that in the day, but that's the Great Plains. There's nothing, nothing between you and Canada. It's very different here. Mountains, oceans, Gulf Stream, jet stream, everything else kicking in. And so this has been you're right, third year in a row, and it's you don't get to enjoy much spring weather. My parents were just up here from Florida for a week, and they were wearing a coat the whole time. They said, "Did it ever warm up here?" And I said, "Yeah, July." It goes away. But yeah.
So I wanted to ask you, last time we had you on, we talked a bit about the tornado season starting and how it kind of started with a bit of a bang, and then, of course, you pointed out that there's always lots of tornadoes you never hear about. We haven't really had any CNN tornadoes since then. How is that developing? I mean, is there still a lot of activity, or is it a little quieter than we thought it was going to be?
Yeah, it's what most people thought. Again, good forecasters, there's a number of them out there, thought it would be very quiet coming in. Most of the guys that I follow and in my own projections were that, later April and most of May would kick in. We've had a little bit here in April, a few days where it got active. I think May, what you're going to see, and because we actually leave for our chase trip in Lake, we're out there the whole last 2 weeks of May up to June 1st. And I think it's going to kick in then. I think the last 2 weeks of May will be very active in the Great Plains. And it usually is. That's not unusual. Memorial Day weekend, I mean, that's why I'm always out there that time of year. And it'll probably kick in. In New England, I don't think we'll see much this year. I don't think we'll have, the Springfield incident a few years ago. I don't think we're going to have too much opportunity for that because of the colder water off New England and the warm waters off the Mid-Atlantic. How that'll play in hurricane season, that'll be interesting,
I was going to say, I haven't looked at any long ranges yet for the hurricane season. What's the preliminary projection look like?
Not much. In fact, this is the first time I think I've ever seen consensus from the left and right, and that there would not be a lot of action. But as you know, there probably will be at least one or two good hits, and if they are, they would be on the East Coast, just because the warm water has worked its way so close to the coastline. I think the Gulf Stream, is like 50 to 80 miles further west than usual, which it happens. I mean, that's not unprecedented; it just happens. But that means that your storms that feed off that could be closer to the Carolinas, Virginia, the Capes, places like that, and certainly the Gulf of Mexico, which is very warm. Most people there too. We wouldn't be surprised to see an early June development. And so in close stuff, not a lot of numbers, and probably nothing in the open Atlantic. I did read Diela watched this thing this morning on the Pacific. It was really well done, and the Pacific will probably go into hyperdrive. So you're going to see California, the Southwest getting hammered, and of course that will make the news. And in a good way, California needs some rain, so I mean, that's where they get it from.
Yeah. I listened to Joe Bastardi a couple weeks back, and he was talking about how they were probably going to get some rain this year, possibly just normal precipitation, which is a huge break given the current situation there, but that the long range for California is still really dry.
Oh, yeah, it is. And that is their climate. That's what kind of drives me crazy when I hear people talk about things. Mm-hmm. The Weather Channel had a thing yesterday, and they went over severe weather for April. It's a very active month. Well, it wasn't, but you just got more people reporting now. Everybody, even grandma's got her iPhone and videotaping the hail. So it's just everything's coming, which is great. It's a lot of data, but you can't compare that to 10 or 15 or 20 years ago when, people thought they didn't know what they were looking at half the time. Mm-hmm. So it really wasn't an active month. But overall, this is really good for humanity. I mean, for me, it's not great because I love chasing these things, but less hurricanes, less tornadoes, even the snowpack we get up here helps with the drought. That's water systems, this is good weather you want. Eventually we're going to slip out of it. We'll go back into more violent weather probably in the next year or two.
So, if I remember correctly, the Pacific is still supposed to flip into its cold stage, and the Atlantic is heading towards a cold stage, and we still have low sunspot activity, and there are some volcanic eruptions, which is the third factor. If we have any more serious eruptions in combination with these other things, are we going to get a lot colder? Because that's generally what the prediction is.
Yeah, and you nailed it. That's what generally all the experts in this field say. Something the other day, did you see the volcano off the coast of Oregon, underwater?
Oh.
And I find it really interesting. It's going, and it's getting more violent. Several people, Ryan Malley, I think, was commenting on one of his blogs about how that people are getting fearful. This thing is getting big, closer to the coast. And I always wonder, I don't think they've done a study, what does that affect the water temperature in the ocean? How does that have an effect? You got a volcano going off underwater. It has to change the temperature of the water.
You would think, yeah, because, I mean...
Yeah, and a lot of those have. I think they've done a study. I mean, I've never really studied that field very heavily, in a little bit, but that's pretty significant.
Hasn't the water there been warm lately anyway? I mean...
Yeah, off the northwest coast, you mean?
Right, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, because I know that Joe Bastardi was talking about how that plays into the blocking and how we get our Alberta Clippers and it gets really cold in the Northeast. Yeah, that's an interesting point. I wonder, we're definitely going to have to look into that. Look into that and let us know.
Sure.
I just watched it yesterday. I said, I'm going to have to check more into it, see what studies have been done.
So all that being said, cosmic rays, aerosols, volcanic stuff, that could lead to things being a lot colder. But you also said cold spell in the Atlantic. Does that mean that the Gulf Stream is diverted or is simply not as warm as usual, or is this some other areas or currents, not the Gulf Stream itself?
No, the Gulf Stream itself has migrated a little further west. In fact, Joe Bastardi is the one I actually picked it up from a couple of months ago. He was commenting on that very thing happening. And what's interesting is how it affects the other water temperatures around it. Does all the warm water pool in one place? And this, believe it or not, those currents in the ocean, well, you probably know this, the sea captains use this stuff in the 1600s. I've got books where they would have a ship going along. The ship would be maybe 100 feet long, and from bow to bow, they would record a water temperature difference of 10 to 15 degrees at one end to the other as they hit the Gulf Stream. So people talk extreme today and how warm it is, or with the differential and how tight it is. And I said, I can't get much difference than almost the length of two driveways having a temperature of 15 degrees in the water. So, is this the worst it's ever been? Certainly not. What does it mean? If you look back in those years where those sailors reported that, sometimes they had more violent weather. So weather is a huge package. But as you said, what's happening in the Atlantic Ocean with the currents and everything, it's certainly cool enough out there. It's not going to allow much tropical activity. But like I said, near the coast, it'll be that way. Yeah, I would like to. I do know this. I read the last reports. I don't know if you guys did, because I know you guys keep up with this. But they've been talking about the ice caps this last week, releasing these reports saying, it's not nearly as bad as they thought. Yeah, the caps have stopped melting. Yeah, we didn't take into account all these variables. Well, we were taking into account those variables. They weren't. So I wonder who deserves the funding now to move forward, Yeah.
Quick. Okay, sorry.
So
Max,
I worked
go
on
ahead.
merchant ships for about 10 years, and we took temperature readings from both the bow and the stern, and they were frequently different, not just by 1 or 2 degrees, but sometimes 3 or 4 or 5 degrees.
Interesting, yeah. Empirical data right there, man.
Okay, and that was
it's not lying.
Yeah.
Okay.
Real quick question. You say the Gulf Stream's wandered further west. Does that mean off of the UK? Is Iceland going to be warmer instead, or is it maybe just not so much of Northern Europe and more of the UK and Iceland?
I just started looking at that yesterday, actually, because I usually follow the U.S., and I have involved the U.K. more in the last year. But honestly, I didn't look that far out. I looked up there, but I didn't really assess it and see what the impact would be on that area.
Oh, that's okay.
But it's interesting. I'll get it next time, though, I promise.
Scotland buried under new ice age. No, just kidding.
Yeah, right. Exactly.
All right, so is the summer going to be warmer? I don't know if we covered that.
I think we're going to have, and I agree again, I have to rip off other guys because they've done a good job, like Joby, and others. I think the first half, I think we're going to go to it pretty quick, May, June, early July, and then late July into August, you're going to see it really cool off. I don't think we'll have any extreme temperatures, but that's hard. Sometimes when you have a bad winter in the Northeast, the flip side is you have a rough, 4 to 5 weeks of summertime too, and some people up here wouldn't complain. I personally like it, 80 degrees tops, no humidity. But I think we'll have it, and I think we'll slide into next winter pretty quick because of everything else listed, the sunspots, which is really cool. That's something I never looked at until about 3 years ago. I had some friends at FSU who did study that, and they were always telling me, they said, hey, we know oceanography, oceans have an effect with sunspots. I was like, maybe. And then I looked back, I'm like, why not? Sunspots, the sun? Boy, I mean, it certainly drives this thing.
All right, we're going to sign off here. Thanks a lot for taking some time to talk to us. And when we talk to you next, you'll be back from your storm chasing trip. We'll find out what happened.
Sweet. I look forward to it, man.
All right.
Thanks for having me on.
All right. Thank you, sir. Talk to you later.
Have a great day. Bye.
You too.
This is the Coalition of New Hampshire Taxpayers. We're located at 8 North Main in Concord, New Hampshire. This is a repository for all things conservative and municipal. So if you have a problem in your town, your school, your budget committee, the right to know law, and now at the top of our list is voter fraud. You have a tip for us, some information for us, you want to join or help us out, cnht.org.